opposite ends of the cleanliness spectrum. Serina is freshly showered and smelling great.
And Ian, we're both wet.
And
I'm wet because I just got out of the shower, which is part of the reason why I'm late. I apologize. And then Ian's wet because
I just was tilling.
He is very dirty. Oh, let's see. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, but we should be good for internet. If you want to talk about the videos, and then we'll get into questions. We'll do questions like pretty quickly this week.
So we're actually, we're turning over new leaves all over the farm this year. And one of the things we're trying to do is get all caught up on all these videos that we filmed. So we've got another vlog coming out. I can't remember if it's tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow or the next day. And everybody loves the vlogs, so we're pretty excited about that. They always take a lot of work, so they feel very personal, right? Spend a lot of time making them. And then we've got 2 more videos that we basically already filmed. So we have to film a little bit more for one of them. And those, we're going to try to get those all edited up in a timely fashion so that we can, start filming videos and being like current with what we're editing. So we're really excited about all the good videos that we got coming out. And we're also going to try to do more regular farm tours, and
you probably need this.
Yeah.
Okay, I have this cloth. It looks like my phone. Looks like my phone is greasy, so I'm just gonna clean it quickly. Yeah. Okay, I apologize.
We also have that beam of light right on my face, right? If that wasn't here, then the camera would be probably better.
I think it's fine. It was a little Vaseline lens.
Are we releasing that vlog tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
Okay. So tomorrow morning.
We have to remember.
we have to
release it. It's not currently ready to be released.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then I was just saying we have a couple other videos that we've got filmed, and we're gonna edit them up, and we're trying to put out more videos and put them out more currently. We're working on everything. When we were making these videos, we're trying to find improvements so that the quality of the video as the end product, stays up high, goes up, or at least stays as good as it was. But ways to do that without taking as long in the process. And so
so the goal on the farm is to learn how to work efficiently. The goal on the farm is to be able to do the jobs with the least amount of steps and the least amount of physical labor, so that it makes sense to then sell the crops at the price that they're worth. And we've been doing good at working towards that over the last 5 years for the farm, but we'd neglected to do that in the video business. Yeah. We'd just been kind of doing our best. And so this year we're taking the lessons that we've learned on the farm and we're trying to apply them to the videos, because if you can make 2 videos in the same amount of time that it takes to make 1 video, then you can make more videos, and then the videos don't have to make as much money individually when there's 2 of them, right?
Yeah. And we're just trying to find that final vision for lots of stuff. The farm is approaching the point where it'll kind of be all built up, and then it'll be...
This person knows. CG.
Yeah.
Editing takes forever.
Yeah. And well, the idea was that we were trying to find our kind of artistic vision for the videos. In some ways we were
I'm gonna be back.
We were doing things in pursuit of making better quality videos that the audience would enjoy, and so then we kind of found that formula, but it was really bloated. Like every process was not professionally done, and so the videos, to get that quality level that we were after, just took so much time. And now even like from filming, we're trying to film more consciously in because every bit of footage that you film, you have to go back and watch that when you're editing to see if it's junk or if there's something in it. So you can really just make your life hard for yourself, right off the bat when you're filming the videos. Or, like there's lots of ways, different processes when you're editing that you can save little bits of time here and there. And
here's a question. Do you plan out each shot beforehand?
It's...
I think it's safe to say, like,
there's go-to
95% of the time, no.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and part of what we're working on, like, of getting the videos to be just more manageable, is last year we made a documentary for like community access television. We got a grant, and so we kind of got, we have no film training, right? Like we have the same amount of film training as everyone in the world has who has a cell phone that you can press record.
Yeah.
Like that's our skill level. And so we got to learn a lot of stuff about, what is the processes that filmmakers use to make videos through the process of making that documentary. And coming back to, do we plan each shot? What we learned is that documentaries do plan all of their shots. And so, which I found really surprising.
Yeah.
Right? Because you think of, reality TV, like, they've set up fake situations. But all documentary, and it's being cynical about the planning.
Yeah.
That I think is it's easy to be cynical about reality TV and the fact they plan what they're going to shoot. But the reality is you need to know what you're making when you go to make it. And so even for these things that you think you wouldn't be able to plan for, they do plan for it. They're like, I want to film these people. I want to film these moments. This is how I'm going to film it. This is what I'm going to do with it. And we actually learned in the process of doing that it actually makes the end. If you go in with a plan, and like, this is obvious.
Yeah.
Right? If you go in with a plan, it's easier to get to the final outcome. If you know where you're going, it's easier to reach the destination. And so that is one of the things that we do want to bring more to the channel. It's not that we're like saying that, we're gonna like do fake things, but if we start to film a market video and we're like, okay, we need to film harvesting and we need to film the market and we need to film this and we need to film that, and we go in knowing that we need to film it with a plan to film it, then it keeps us more focused and more organized on the back end, which saves us time.
Yep.
And we got a date. We finally got a date, a tentative date. We have a general for when the documentary is going to release. Really? Yeah, they said that, so we can't put it on YouTube until the TELUS releases it, through their community access stuff, including their YouTube. And then at that point, then we have permission to put it on to social media.
I thought we had to wait a year after that.
I don't think so. I
thought we had to wait a year till we could put it on our stuff.
I think the year is that it would take about a year after it's done.
Oh, yeah.
Before they would release it, right? And so they said that it's going to be coming, they're planning for October, which means that, maybe we could release it, around Christmas time.
Yeah.
Which would be exciting because we're really proud of it. So.
Well, if you're in Canada and you have TELUS Optic TV, then you can definitely see it.
Yeah. In October.
In October.
Yeah, because we'll have two videos. Because we made
the Story of Tulips.
Yeah, the Story of Tulips.
Which was they're like make a video to prove that you can make a video before you make the video that we're actually paying you to do. And then I think the CRTC regulated that they needed a certain amount of content, so they were like, let's squeeze some more content out of these local guys.
Yeah, I think for the funding they had to get a certain number of minutes, and so they had to add on an extra project. But it was great for us. We have 2 videos. We have a half an hour video that's basically the entire amazing tulip season from last year.
Yeah.
Like not just Mother's Day, but like all
tulip start to finish.
All of May put into like one half an hour video, which is like, it looks amazing, right? It was like all the best footage.
Yeah.
And then we have how long did it end up being? About 15 minutes?
Yeah.
18 minutes? Something like that? Yeah, and then we have like around 15-minute long like story of the entire year is what the
kind of like
the final documentary was.
It checks in kind of every month of the season is kind of how it works. So it's all these like little blip 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 blip, and then when our editor or like our consultant lady,
executive producer, I'd call her, but she was a mentor.
Yeah, when she first saw it, she'd be like, I like this or that or whatever. She'd be like, I love this. Cut it down by over a half.
No, she's like, this is amazing. Just take out 2/3.
Yeah. Which is like really important. We already tried to be concise, but we learned that we weren't being as concise as we could be.
I think we learned some really great lessons. Like, it was a lot of work, and it wasn't worth the money for the grant, even though the grant was very generous. But I feel like the skills that we learned in it was definitely important.
Yeah.
And if all we learned is to...
On this episode of You Can't Eat the Grass, Ian and Serina do a live video.
And we talk forever. Yeah. No, I feel if all we learned is that we don't want to pursue film and television, and that we want to keep our focus on social media, that in itself was a great lesson.
I felt really like boxed in by television production. For one, like Serina said, they expected us to already know what we were doing.
Just so you know, I'm gonna say we got to 15 minutes,
okay,
and we're gonna get to questions. Ian really likes talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
what was I saying?
Boxed in by...
Oh yeah. And it would be like, oh, if you're going to shoot somewhere, make sure you have signed release forms from everyone and everything that could possibly be involved with this particular subject, and make sure that this, whatever it is, there's just like lots of rules. And for us, some of the magic of the videos is like Serena says, in a way we know what we're going to shoot. Like, oh, when we harvest the ranunculus, we should do a ranunculus harvesting scene. But there's elements to the story that we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to have a good sales week or a bad sales week, or if someone's going to get sick or something is going to happen that's extraordinary. And so that capturing it as it happens and the realness of it is part of what makes the videos interesting. I think that the concise part is super important, because we could talk for 2 minutes. Sometimes like a segment will be like one of us talking for...
I mean, they've seen our videos.
20 seconds in a video, but say 20 seconds or 30 seconds of talking. We might have recorded 8 minutes of like, especially me, and not all of that doesn't say any information that isn't included in that little blurb, or that blurb sums up the feelings, or just like that's all you need, right? And anything else feels redundant, and redundant feels boring. So concise helps you tell your story, because people can get all of these little concise points, and it builds up to something bigger, as opposed to like one big 8-minute blah, and then people just tune out, right? And then there is no story. They never even saw that there was going to be a story, because it was just you talking forever about nothing.
Totally. And one thing I think specifically about that was one piece of feedback that we got is, because the story is that it's like hard work, and then we get tired and we get overwhelmed, right? Like it's the story of every year. We like start out excited and then we get overwhelmed and then bad things happen, but then it actually ends up that it's okay in the end, and then it's over and we rest and it starts again. That's like our life from now until forever. And we had one scene where it's like we're working, we're trying to get this thing done and it's just not getting done. And then I'm like talking to the camera and I'm like, I'm really tired, right? And then I go on and I explain like why I'm tired and like the frustration. And she was like, she's like, yeah, you know, it just kind of sounds like you're whining. she's like, why do we need to hear you say that you're tired? Like you should cut, like that is like bad. And it was like, what do you mean, right? Like, but I was like, yeah, totally, right? Like if the audience doesn't already know that I'm tired before I say I'm tired, then I've failed to capture, then what's the point, right? You're not gonna believe me if I tell you I'm tired if you can't also see that I'm tired. Or if I don't show you why I would be tired, why would you care if I'm saying I'm tired, right? It's so, and we went through and we cut out anything that was like me expressing like,
I'm this, I'm that.
Yeah, like I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling excited. We cut all of that out and, you know, and saved like a minute. And it was like, wow, we did not ever need to say that even once. We cut that out and it was stronger.
Yeah, it gets better. And so now we've carried that over, you know. Serina will remind me all the time. She's like, I saw the footage, you're you know, being whiny or whatever.
Well, like,
yeah, no, but it makes
but sometimes you are, right? Like, yeah. You know, like you guys aren't like,
but it's like
you guys aren't me and Ian, right? Like, you know, if I'm like, oh, I'm like annoyed today because this happened, right? Like, you guys don't need to hear me vent.
Yeah,
right?
and there's a challenge too
unless it's like sharing a real experience, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if something bad happens, we want to share that with you, but you guys don't need to hear me like go on. Oh, I can't believe this happened, and like, can you believe? Like,
well, what it is too is like, you know, it's not something that you always do when you're just like walking around talking to a camera. And what that is that's like a conversation that you're having with you know, audience, a group of people that are watching. It's also kind of like an inner monologue that's some, you know, like it's a way to talk out things that have been going through your head. And so
you're basically talking to yourself.
You're basically talking.
Leah is very much
you're basically a weirdo because you're talking to yourself.
Yeah, and so what sounds okay in your head doesn't necessarily make for entertaining video. And so sometimes, you know, you're struggling to find the words to express to the camera in a way that feels like natural, but also says the things that you wanted to say. And there's a camera rolling, you know, and you're staring at it. And sometimes it's hard to get to the point. And so, you know, there's footage that isn't good, but you can get lost in your own vision of like yourself. You're like, oh, I'm talking about this. Everybody wants to hear my thoughts on this, right? I'm so smart and I have so many well thought out ideas. But that's not the truth. And you have to get to the point to be able to engage with people properly, right?
If we want to do that, we can do it in a live video.
Yeah.
Right? That's what this is for. Right? This is when we can be like, no guys, like seriously, like I saw in the comments that you didn't believe me when I said I was tired. So let me tell you why, all the reasons why I was tired. I wasn't actually complaining.
Okay. No more.
Okay, so there was a question. You can answer it briefly because like
like a video question?
Yeah, so we can talk about videos forever, but I do want to get to questions because I literally said this was going to be a question one. But someone was asking like about feeling natural talking to the camera. And if it was like, oh, it's just you are born
You're
feeling
definitely-
comfortable talking to the camera, or if it's learned.
You're definitely not born. And Serina was like far more of a natural.
I mean, if you want to see what it's like, we have all of our videos up.
Egyptian,
right? Like you can
Egyptian
go back.
walking onions.
You can go watch our first video, and that's like super awkward.
But
right?
you also deleted a bunch.
No, we did. Oh no, we just deleted stuff that had you guys in it.
Like I saw them the other day.
Wasn't your first one?
No, the very first video that we ever filmed was about Egyptian walking onions, and that was like our let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh
But-
yeah,
and-
I think I remember.
And
Yeah,
How do
and
I
when I
remember-
watch it,
How
I'm
do
like,
I remember?
whoa, I'm so awkward. But I'm also like,
But
I
you
don't
can-
know, but I still look pretty good.
Yeah, you can see.
Right? I'm like, this is still a passable video. You know, and I think for me, my approach that I took to that video was I knew what I wanted to say. It's got there's 8 airplanes directly over our head right
there's
now.
literally
Yeah.
2. They never do that.
I knew what I wanted to say, and I kind of had planned out what the video was gonna be. Leah, yeah, no, you're no.
I
Um,
make this food.
Well, then go get some hazelnuts.
Okay,
No.
just go get stuff. You can go have a treat. Okay, go take a treat before we get in there, because then we're gonna stop you from having treats. The kids, the rules: if the kids don't bug us during live videos, they're allowed treats.
Yeah.
But it only gets us like a half an hour.
So
Yeah, so I went into the video, the very first video that we did, having a plan of what I wanted to do in the video and having a plan of what I wanted to say. And so even though I didn't have a script, you know, it would be like, okay, I'm going to talk about this specific thing, you know, and then it was like, okay, like I'm nervous, right? It's like getting up on stage and talking in front of people. It's like, I'm nervous about doing this, but I'm confident in what I'm speaking about.
yeah,
And so for me, you know, because when we started the channel, I'd already been gardening for 14 years, right? Because it's been 20 years now that I've been gardening. And so I was already fairly confident in the knowledge of the things that I was sharing. You know, and I knew the details that I wanted to share. So speaking about these things that I already felt confident speaking about made it easy.
and then you have a lot of words.
Yeah.
A lot of words in there.
But I think that for you,
For me,
you weren't quite as
I
confident.
wasn't.
And I think that maybe not having the confidence of the knowledge
Yeah.
is part of it.
So for me, I was embarrassed at first. We were living in the downtown suburbs of our city. And so, you know, if you're sitting out here talking at this volume, like we're doing right now, you know, our neighbors could be in their yard and they could hear us talking. And I was self-conscious about that. And when we moved here, that went away because, you know, hello.
Well, don't do that because the neighbors actually can't hear you.
Well, they're not going to say anything. You know, it doesn't matter anymore, right? And so once that started to leave me, I started getting comfortable talking to the camera. And now
then I was like, Ian, talk to the camera at the market while all these people are standing around staring at you like you're a weirdo. And you're like, no,
don't make me know.
Don't make me. And then I was like, shut up, do it. I was like, do a stupid dance before you start talking so that it looks better on the camera. He's like, no. But sometimes you need that person there to push you to challenge your comfort zones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
then
then-
practice makes perfect.
Then I was making those videos and I was like, oh, I should do hourly sales updates. That'd be really interesting and engaging.
You can go have treats, but not when we get in there. There's no more treats.
Yeah. So that, you know, drive to make the entertaining content was what, you know, really pushed me to be able to be
And now?
comfortable.
Wait.
Now I could pull out a camera in the mall. Or what did I say?
I mean,
What
we have filmed in the mall before.
I said that. I said that when we were flying to Mexico that
Oh yeah,
I was gonna walk
Ian was
down
gonna
this
like
kind of-
walk down the aisle, like to the seat, like talking to the camera.
as
And I
an
was-
obvious joke. I was
But
not,
I was
I could I am not at that level.
But we got there, and I was like, Ian, I got the camera. Like, are you ready? He was like,
no way.
no, I didn't mean it. But we have filmed a vlog, like at the airport and on the airplane and all that
Yeah.
before, right? So, you know, it's kind of like, it's embarrassing, and no one cares that we make YouTube videos. Like, all of our friends and family think it's lame, and they make fun of us. So I think we've just like embraced it.
Yeah.
Also, I like money.
Yeah.
When we
it's
talk,
like
when
make
we
a
talk to ourselves and when we talk to ourselves in public, then it leads to making money. So then I can justify doing it.
Yeah. And I you know, I am in search of entertainment. You know, like when I watch some of our videos and I'm like, these are actually really good, and I'm like, can you imagine, you know, for us, we obviously, it's like our house and our life and our, you know, each other and our work that we do and our lives.
I don't know where you're going with
Well,
this.
it's like,
Can you imagine?
no, but
Can you imagine what?
like viewing our content from an outside
Oh.
perspective. Like if it was like, you know, I've already
Well, I mean,
lived that.
I've watched the video, so yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. It's just, you know, I think that they come out and they're like unique and entertaining, and I'm driven to make quality content because now we know how, and it's like this skill we've developed, and so it's like, ooh, this is fun.
So we're gonna shut down the channel and we're gonna start a wedding videography business. Not actually. Okay, so it's been a half an hour. We could talk about video stuff forever, and I know these live videos are self-indulgent.
Do you mind if I go?
Yeah, go see about the kids.
Yeah.
Right, and then if you want, then you
I'll
can
come back in a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a really hard time reading comments and answering comments at the exact same time. So if you have a question, if you can put it in all caps, then I can see it, right? Then it catches my eye a little bit better, and then it's fine if you guys like are still talking in the chat. But then I can be like, oh, question. But okay, so I saw a question about the employee, and so. So when we had an employee before, she said she didn't really want to be in the videos, and she didn't really want us like sharing who she was or anything about her, because obviously that's a question that we want to, like, you know, we want to respect people's like personal preferences. But Nellie, our new employee, she was like, don't call me the employee, that's weird. So her name is Nellie, and she's, I don't know, like I think we're getting on to like 6 weeks that she's been working with us now, and it's been amazing. But we don't have a ton of stuff of her in the videos, just because we've been like working together a lot and getting lots done, and so because we're busy working, we're not filming, right? The reality is often when we like are settling down into work, we're working like so focused that we can't kind of, it slows down the whole process of getting anything done on the farm when we're filming. So often we will take specific jobs and be like, we're gonna film this, and then we'll film it because it's manageable to film it and do the work, but it'll take like 3 times as long when we pull the camera out. So we don't want like Nellie standing around like waiting to do her work, because we're like, okay, no, we gotta get the camera angle, right? We gotta like, okay, like, you know, showing the cedar, like using the cedar takes like 5 minutes to do a bed, including changing out the wheels and everything. Is really fast, it's really quick, it's an amazing tool. But anytime we film using the cedar, you know, I kind of have to like set it up at the start of the bed, and Ian gets into the angle that he wants to film it from, and then I push it, and then it's like, okay, stop, change the angle. So we do it so that it looks like what it actually looks like when we use it, using the the footage, but the process of getting the footage that makes it look like what it actually looks like when we use it doesn't look like using it. So she's not going to be super involved in the making and the filming of the videos and stuff. But she is going to be here over the winter. And so one of the great things about that is we've been saying for years that there's a bunch of products that we want to do, right? Like the Christmas ornaments, we'd like to get a website up and be able to sell those to you guys. But we just don't have the capacity to do like shipping. But Nellie's going to be here in the winter. So we're talking about doing a calendar, and we're talking about having the dried flower balls that we'll have for shipping. Maybe there's a few other things that me and her can work on together to be able to ship for you guys. So, we can finally offer products that come from the house. Because that's like one of the things we love. The t-shirts are great, but we don't actually, it's another website that kind of fulfills the t-shirt orders, right? So if you have any issues, they have a great customer service department, but we create the designs. We say, oh, what color it's going to be on a t-shirt of this color. It can also be available on a tank top, but it's not going to be available on mesh shirts or whatever. But then when you actually order the product, you're ordering it from a company who's like printing and shipping it, and then all that. So that's been great because we don't have time to do that. Okay, so I have the chat paused because there's a bunch of questions here, and then I'll just kind of work my way through. How did you two meet? So Ian and I were living in Victoria. Ian had like a friend who, because him and his best friend moved from Ontario out to the West Coast, and then they were working in like oil patch type jobs, and they had kind of turned Victoria into their home base, or that general area. And so he had been living there when he wasn't working, and then I was in Victoria going to university, and we met at a really scummy dive bar on their midweek 80s night. I was there with my coworkers. We were having like a woo work party dancing thing, and Ian was there, and we ended up dancing together. And then we found out that we're neighbors, and when things are that convenient, then why not, right? And so we got together, and then we moved. I grew up in Kelowna, and I was like, you know what is like the best place in the entire world? It's so beautiful, and we should probably live there, Kelowna. And so then we moved back here together after a year of being together. Okay, how apart do you space zinnias and flowers in the ground? Okay, so I talk about this all the time, that I do like 4 rows, and then okay, let me think. So my entire garden bed, okay, no, I need to go even further back than that. So my farm system is set up to be like a market garden system for veggies. And so the kind of like the standard that a lot of them use for these more like hand tool type growing is, it's like there's like something poking me. Sorry. Okay, is that they do these 4-foot beds, and then it's an 18-inch path and then a 30-inch growing space. And the idea is that you plant everything really tight so it fills in, it keeps the weeds down, but then the 30 inches is really manageable to physically like lean over and harvest from. So the path is really narrow, but the bed itself is really narrow too, so you could like straddle it, you can stand over it. They're really comfortable to work in for veggies. They're not necessarily the best setup for flowers, because flowers get a lot bigger than a lot of veggie plants. But so on the 30-inch bed, they often will, because a lot of the veggie plants are direct seeded. That's why we have the cedar, the Jang cedar, which I love. And then the question is like, how many rows per bed do you fit in the 30 inches, right? And so a really, like a standard, this is a plant that's going to get kind of big, like a lettuce or a bok choy or, whatever, is you're going to have 4 rows of them. So, you know, when you divide it by 30 inches, you don't actually divide it by 4, you divide it by 5 because you need the space on the outside edges, right? It's like 4 of the thing is actually kind of, you know, 5, right? Like a half on the edge. I don't know. But yeah. So a 30-inch bed is the spacing between the plants is 6 inches, right? I think. I don't know. Something like that. Anyway, so what a lot of my stuff is I do 4 rows. But the beds have kind of creeped out a little bit over the years. And I've planted closer to the edges. And so the spacing kind of is like 8 inches apart in the bed. And then I do one every 6 inches is kind of my a lot of my fabric is burnt in that 4-row pattern. And then I don't do any sort of stagger planting, just because I'm, you know, other people do it to be able to fit more in and to make things tighter. But I find it a lot easier to manage weeds and everything when they're not staggered, when they're on like a grid, right? So rather than stagger planting, which gives each plant a little bit more space, I do grid planting, right? So they touch each other and then there's a little bit of a gap. I don't know if that's making sense. Yeah, so most of my beds have 400 plants in them because we grow 50-foot beds, and each row at 6 inches spacing fits 100 plants, and then 4 rows across is 400 plants. But you can go a lot tighter, right? Like, you know, though that 4 by 100 thing is great for veggies, but with flowers, you can go really tight. So the zinnias get pretty big. I mostly do the zinnias on the 4 grid, but I'll also do it on like a 5, right? And the 5 grid is like a true 6 inches, right? It's 6 inches that way and 6 inches the other way. The 4 grid, like I said, is more like 8 inches apart. And yeah, so and honestly, you could get them even tighter than that if you wanted. Zinnias, you know, they turn into beasts, but a lot of stuff you can cram in really, really tight with the flowers. There are some stuff that we do 9 inches by 9 inches. And so that's more like a 3 across bed. And then there's some stuff that I kind of do like 3 across, like, so kind of like 10 inches, and then by a foot, like cosmos, they take up so much space. Marigolds, they get really big. So that kind of stuff will space a little bit more. But for flowers, I mean, other than like, the dahlias is probably the thing we give the most space. And even dahlias, I plant them a foot and then 2 of them per farm bed, right? So dahlias, I would plant 100 dahlias in my 50-foot long, 30-inch wide beds. If I was going to like redesign the farm, I would go for wider beds. I would do like a 3-foot bed instead of a 30-inch bed. I'd maybe even go up to like 3.5 feet, 4 feet, because with flowers, like because you're not down on the ground, you're standing up more, it makes it kind of easier to reach in, and you can work from the other half. And then I would like 18-inch paths are ridiculous. 18-inch paths mean that like you can't even walk in the farm. You know, Ian's not allowed to go into the flower beds by the time we hit the summer, because there is no path anymore. There's like a path that I can go in because I like part the sea, like I swim into the flower bed. But it's, you know, like I said, if I was gonna redo it, you know, I'd be like 3-foot beds, 3-foot paths, or 4-foot beds, 3-foot paths, and even that would have the plants like coming really close to touching each other, just because flowers, they can take up a lot of space. Okay, let's see. Question: can you save tulip bulbs and reuse them, and if so, how? Okay, so when I pull the tulips out of the ground, and then I cut them right at the level of the tulip so that all the leaves are attached to what I'm selling, which we do so that we can get like a long stem, right? If flowers are in the ground, you know, so they're down this much, and then there's all the leaves, and then we cut off, we'd only have these little shorty stems on the tulips. But by pulling them out, ripping all the leaves off, we can make these nice long bouquet stems. So if I was to cut it, there's no leaves, it's just the bulb, and I took that and I planted that, there is a chance that like a third of it, a quarter of it could survive and send up a leaf the next year. It's going to be very, very sad. It's barely going to survive. It can send up a leaf. Once that leaf grows for a year, the leaf then puts energy into the bulb. And then the next year, oh, it sends up a bunch of leaves, and maybe there's a little tiny baby-sized flower. And then the year after that, it's going to have like a proper size flower. So you could take it and salvage a little bit. Or you could leave a leaf, right? So if you want a little bit of stem length, but you still want to maybe have a flower the next year, if you leave one leaf on your tulip, you don't pull it out of the ground, leave it in the ground, leave a single leaf, you know, take the top 2 leaves. The next year you'll have a smaller flower, but there's probably a good chance you'll still have a flower. Or you can, if you just pick the flower and you leave all the leaves there, then it's going to be as healthy as if you didn't take the flower. Taking the flower off isn't the thing that affects the bulbs. The thing that affects the bulbs is removing the leaves from the plant, because the plant needs the leaves to create the new bulb for the year going forward. So where I live, we have really great tulip growing conditions. We have really good drainage. We have really dry summers. Things aren't really going to rot in the ground. And then we have cold weather, because tulips need a certain number of like chill hours, which is, you know, cold, being exposed to the cold over the winter in order to get them to bloom. So I have an amazing tulip growing area, so it makes sense for me to put tulips into my garden. Every year they come back. It's not something that I have to plant again and again and again just to have flowers in the garden. So I do have lots of tulips planted around the yard because I enjoy them and I like looking at them. And every year we do plant some more. But I have voles. I have voles that come and they love the tulips. It's like one of their favorite things to eat. And so over the winter, the voles will get in and eat them. So every year I have like sections where the voles have found out that I have tulips, and then the tulips disappear, and so then I have to replant it or not replant it because like they probably are like, oh sweet, more snacks. I have to plant them in a different spot where the voles won't come. So I'm not super concerned about salvaging all of the bulbs that we cut off of, you know, the 10,000 tulips that we buy, because it's not like if I planted them, like, you know, now it's like year 2, year 3 before I have flowers, and the voles very likely would come and find them. Okay, Sam, but with no, you have to stay away from the camera, okay? No. Sorry. What? Okay, Sam, I'm sorry, I can't, but I'll come in a little bit, okay? Yeah. So if you don't have an area, like, so if you're in like southern United States, it doesn't get cold enough, you won't get flowers. So tulips aren't going to be a great one to plant and have it try to come back year after year. Or if you're in an area where it gets a lot of rain, they might rot, and so tulips might not be a great perennial for you. Can you reuse gladiolus corms, or do you need new ones every year? So glads are like a tulip. If you put them in the ground, every year they come back. You know, they start out as a little leaf, and then they get bigger and they get bigger, and they create these like little mini corms on the sides that like start out as little babies and they eventually grow. Lilies are kind of the same too, right? And so if you plant them, they start to, you know, grow into a cluster, and then you have lots of them. Or like daffodils, right? Like all of these kind of bulb things can naturalize, perennialize into your garden. For me though, we get too cold. Glads are supposed to be good to zone 5, but where we are, even though we are zone 5, we don't get a lot of snow in the winter, and so because of that, the ground freezes harder than it normally would for a zone 5. So I think that for winter kill, we're probably a lot more comparable to a zone 4, even though our winters aren't as cold as a zone 4. So So some things, if they're planted really deep, are going to be fine, but the glads, like I've never had success. Every year I'll have a few leaves come back, but it's not like anything is growing back that's strong enough to actually flower again. So for me, if I wanted to have glads, if I wanted my glads to come back every year, I'd have to treat them like a dahlia. I'd have to, oh, the frost is here, dig them up. Like I have to wait for the foliage to die back, dig it up, put it in my garage, store it, make sure they're happy, make sure they're healthy, and then go and plant them back in. And that whole process is time consuming and a lot of physical labor. So in a home garden, if you really love glads, you have these glads that you want to grow year after year, it probably makes sense to do that, because the whole point of having gardening as a hobby is to have something to do, right? Like so you don't begrudge time spent in the garden. But on the farm, because it's about money, right? So there's things that I do that don't make sense. But I try to do those things that don't make sense more for home garden reasons and not for farm reasons. So the glads that I purchase, I buy smaller corms because the smaller corms make smaller flowers, and the smaller flowers are actually a lot easier for me to work with in bouquets. So they're 30 cents. They're not very expensive. So then it becomes a question of, okay, if I save 1,000 corms, that's $300. How long does it take me to dig up 1,000 corms? How much work does it take me to cut all the greenery off and to process the corms into winter storage? How much time does, like, what is the space? Like, how much time do I spend taking care of them over the winter? Is that space that I maybe could be using to save something that's more valuable? All these things it becomes a math equation. And for glads, they might not be worth it. One thing that we've talked about this year is, so we're doing, like, in the farm tour video that we just put out, we are doing the glads in the crates, and I've done them in the crates before and they worked really good, right? Like they grew really well, and no problems. They're great in the crates. And so what I could actually do is, when they're done flowering in the crates, I could pick up the crate and move it somewhere, let it die back, if I let them just die back, it's easy for me to take the greenery off, and then I could potentially stack the crates in my garage in somewhere that's sheltered, and then have them, like, the crate completely dried out. They're not going to sprout. We have no humidity in the air. They're not going to, the soil isn't going to get wet and have them sprout until I water them. So I can basically store them in the crates dormant, and then as I want them, I can take them out, put them in my greenhouse and water them, and potentially use them as a succession. We're talking about maybe doing it, but the one thing about it is the crates are, like, very, very precious to us. The crates are amazing to do for the tulips, right? To be able to do what we're doing with the glads, the crates are worth money to us. The crates are worth more money to us than how many glads are in the crates. So we got a ton of crates this year because we bought so many tulip bulbs. We had our tulip bulbs shipped to us in those crates. That's where they come from. It's how they're shipped, from Holland. They get put in crates in Holland, sent over the ocean in a boat, and then dropped off at the Van Noort, who's where we buy our tulips from. And then if Van Noort can, they then are like, oh, perfect, Serina wants an entire crate, onto the pallet, and then they ship it to my house. They were $5 deposit fee. When we return them, we get our $5 back. And Ian and I were like, woohoo, you're never seeing these again. These are ours. What a deal for crates. So if we can every year be getting more and more of these crates, then we're going to be excited about ways that we can use these crates on the farm. But next, they still might be too precious for us to waste them on glads. Yeah, because the glads, they're just really cheap. Okay, so that was a very long question. Very long answer to a simple question. How many gladiolus stems would go in one bunch? Okay, so I think I saw you asking that before when we were talking about video stuff. So the way that I try to price glads is at $3 retail. You know, they're a little bit, they're more, so I retail my tulips at about $2. And the glads are, for me, even though the price of the glad bulb is pretty comparable to my tulip bulbs and the labor is pretty comparable to, one of the things that makes it so I can afford to sell the tulips for a little bit less is, like, first of all, they're a loss leader, right? So they're amazing way to start my season. They lead to future sales, so there doesn't have to be as much pressure on them to sell. And then also the tulips can actually be dry stored. So that means, like you've seen it in the videos, we pull them out of the ground with the bulb attached, I put them in the cooler, and then I don't have to use them right away. And giving them some shelf life that way means that there's less loss in unsold tulips, which means that I don't have to factor in pricing for unsold stems in tulips in quite the same way that I have to factor in unsold stems for other crops, and specifically glads, because you're asking how much I sell glads for. So glads, you know, when I pick them, I have to sell them. They do hold in the cooler, you know, for like a week, right? So I can, if they bloom on, if they're ready to be picked on a Monday, I can pick them, have them in the cooler, still have them have, you know, lots and lots of vase life for when I sell them, you know, on the weekend. That's the great thing about a cooler for like flower farming. You learn the right stage to pick things and then how to store them in the cooler, and then it gets you kind of the ability to sell on the weekends, even though you have to pick flowers all week long. So glads, I sell them $3 retail. My $20 bouquets are not $20 worth of retail pricing, because we have $2 worth of tax on our bouquets. So when I do the math to add up like retail prices on the bouquets, it has to add up to 18. So that's the reason why the tulips, we were doing a lot of the tulip bouquets as eight tulips and then like a filler, right? Because it was like, okay, the tulips, because like the tulips kind of do need to be a little bit more than $2, ideally. So, you know, like you'd think if I said, oh, $2, I'm going to put 10 tulips in. But if I did that, I'm going to be losing $2 every single time, because our bouquets are sold as tax inclusive. So I wouldn't ever make a glad bouquet that was like $3 times 18, right? Like, so what would that be? 6 glads. I wouldn't be able to sell 6 glads for $20. People just don't like glads enough to do that. But what I can do is one bouquet that I sell that does quite well is I do sunflowers and glads together, because I can get sunflowers that have really long stems and then the glads have really long stems. So I can create these extra tall bouquets. And what I do is I do 4 sunflowers. And so my sunflowers are kind of like, I usually price them at $2.50, and then I do 3 glads and I put that together as a bouquet. And so that technically is $19, but I'm also like, if I can, because it's so easy to put together, I can also justify using, like, putting a little bit more into it. But I also, the one way I'll use glads and bouquets, because they're kind of tricky to use, is I'll pinch the top off, like the buds, so then they become like a more short flower, and they'll look more like a focal. They'll almost look like a tropical, like oh, it's a hibiscus lily thing, right? Like people won't know what they are. And I'll put one into the center as a focal in a bouquet. So it'll be $3 into the bouquet, and then, you know, other fillers to add up to the $18. And so that's a way that I can also, you know, do pretty good with the $3 pricing on the glads. Yeah. someone's saying, oh, this is probably about Nellie. Introduce her to your viewers if she's okay with that. Yeah, and she's been in the videos. She doesn't want to talk in the videos. That's her like comfort level. She's like happy to be like working in the videos, but she doesn't want to be talking. So, I respect that, right? Like we already had a conversation at the beginning of this video that it's awkward to talk to a camera. So, like I get it. How do you manage so much in a 24-hour period? Well, I mean, so like I'm just, I'm trying to think of like how to say, like, I don't think we get as much done. Some people think we get nothing done, and some people think we get like so much done. And I think that the reality is that we're getting the normal, like we're doing what we can. But there's maybe things that we're not doing that other people do, right? Like our house is a crazy mess. And like we work a lot. We don't have a great work-life balance. One of our goals this year with having Nellie working with us is to get a better work-life balance. Like I know that we show like in the videos, like me working till 4 a.m. doing bouquets. And lots of people will be like really worried about me in the past about that. But like the context to that is that I'm a night owl and I sleep in. Right. So if I work till 4 a.m, I'm sleeping in till like 11 o'clock. So I'm still getting a lot of sleep. And like I normally get up at 8:30. That's like that. And that's like, okay, that's like me like getting up at a decent time. And then if I like stay up late, right? Because our whole goal is to like not have me like go to bed at 4 a.m. and wake up at noon to kind of like get my schedule a little bit more normal. But yeah, so like, with my bedtime being 8:30, if I stay up late, I can sleep in. And then Ian does the morning with the kids. And then we also like, Ian and I are both like not morning people. So we tend to like take it easy in the mornings, right? Like the mornings we'll like do social media stuff. We'll like go do emails. We'll kind of like have a lazy, slow start morning, and then we'll start getting work done. So sometimes people project like what they do in a day onto what isn't seen in the videos, and then they just see me like they're like, oh, Serina already did all the things that I normally do in the day, and then she worked till 4 a.m. Oh my god, how does she do it? No wonder, like, she's gonna die. She's getting 0 hours of sleep. But yeah, so we work a lot, which is easy, right? Because we work from home. But we also do a lot of work where like we kind of get pulled around from place to place to place. And so our goal this year, like we were saying at the beginning, we want to be more efficient in making the videos. We want to like get some better time management, and we also want to do the same thing on the farm, get better time management, get some work-life balance. So, don't feel like I do everything. There's a lot of things that other people do that we're not doing, and that's how we're able to do the things that you see us do. So like don't anyone feel pressured by me staying up till 4 a.m. to think that they should also stay up till 4 a.m. when they actually got up at 6 a.m, dealing with kids and stuff, because that's not the reality. Did you see my flat bed idea for next spring? No, I don't think I haven't been on Instagram at all today. So I'm assuming that was like, because I saw that you sent me an Instagram message yesterday. So I'm assuming maybe you got back to me. Do you grow marijuana in Canada? If so, do you all grow any? Yeah, so marijuana's been legalized in Canada. You're allowed to grow it. I forget what the rules are. You can like grow a few plants. Like I don't smoke. Ian does, but my dad is, you know, like he's grown plants in the past. You know, it's like you get so much off of a plant. It's like crazy. So we've like I'm not very like we tried growing a plant once the year that it was legalized just because it's fun to grow. To try like new things and like it's easy to gift to people. But yeah, I was really bad at growing it. The moral of the story, I'm not that great at growing flowers. It takes me experience to grow flowers, and marijuana is actually a flower. So so yeah. But yeah, no, it's legal here. I don't know. Like if you want advice on how to grow it, I'm sure there's a better there's many YouTube channels, but I'm not the one. Are you considering redoing the farm beds? Okay, this is probably in reference to like the flowers. No. Because I'm like, well, but if I take my farm, which is currently set up uh to have 100 beds, and then I make it so that half of the beds are paths, then I'm gonna only have 50 beds, and then I wouldn't be able to grow as much. I'm actually cramming a lot of stuff in there. So even though like there's always a point at which it gets ridiculous, and it's like, Serina, what are you doing? This is crazy town. I'm like, I'm not ready to learn from my mistakes and be like, nope, I just got to do better. What I've been doing over the last couple of years is I've been being more intentional in how I plant the farm so that there is space between the beds. So what I'll do is I'll plant a really tall crop, and then I'll plant a shorter crop beside it, and then a really tall crop. Like a good example is last year I did status, straw flowers, status. And so what that did is, because the status is low and then it flowers kind of up from the ground, it made it so that then the straw, because so what the flowers do that makes it so they take over the path is they come up and they come up and they come up, and then they get heavy and then they fall open, right? And so, you know, when the two paths, like, so here's a little path and then the plants come up, right? It's fine, right? There's lots of space, there's lots of space, there's lots of space, there's lots of space, and then it gets like this, and then they fall into each other. And that's why I have to like swim through them, because I have to like open up the plants, because there is space, but they've laid into each other. So if I just walk through, it'll smash it. But so what I do is I'm picking a path for myself. I pick a path in, and then I pick everything. And then it's fairly easy to go until the next week when I have to come and pick another path. But by doing the lower beds and then the taller bed and then the lower bed, when it opened, right, I still had lots of space to get to the status down here, and then the straw flowers were up here. And so when I did that, it actually gave me like good movement on the farm. And then there's other crops that are like a little bit more mannerly. So things like the sunflowers. And my sunflowers, like I don't know what's up with my soil. I have to soil test this year, but I can't grow big sunflowers to save my life. It works out well for me because I get these small sunflowers that are like really fun to use in bouquets. But if I wanted to grow big, beautiful sunflowers for something, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd have to be like, sorry, if you're looking for large sunflowers, you've got to go to a different farm. It's not happening here. So because of that, the sunflowers, they stay quite stunted on my farm. And it might be that I don't water them enough. Maybe they want more water, because we're like very like I call the farm the sand pit, because the drainage is crazy. I can leave a hose running and it's like a puddle doesn't form. And like I've done this. I've accidentally left the hose on overnight and come out and there's no puddle. It's like, oh, the ground's a little squishy because it's actually wet, but the drainage is just crazy. So sunflowers are another crop, like what I was saying about like things that don't fall over and take over the path. The sunflowers, they stay quite low. They'll come to about my waist, the sunflowers, and then they're very stiff and upright, so they don't fall open. So, you know, sunflowers, if I do sunflowers and then there's 60 days, so let's say I'm gonna plant I don't know what's like a big beast. zinnias, right? So zinnias, they're going to be compact, and then they're going to get crazy, right? But they get crazy at about the 3-month mark. So it would be a great farm plan for me to do a bed of zinnias, a bed of sunflowers, a bed of zinnias, right? And so what's going to happen is the zinnias, they're going to be growing, and then the sunflowers too, they're going to grow, and then the sunflowers are 60 days, boom, they're done. I pick out that bed. Now those zinnias, now they've gotten bigger, and now they're taking over the sunflower bed, but because I've emptied out the sunflower bed in the succession, I don't necessarily have to plant anything in there. I could keep that as an empty space, and now I can use that, what is normally a growing bed, as a path or staging area, and now I have like all this space to deal with the overgrown zinnias. So that's been my approach that has made it so I'm not yet talking about changing the farm layout, because it's a little intimidating. I'd have to change the irrigation. I'd have to change, everything would have to change, right? And so it would cost money. If I can make it work, I'm not going to do it. Have you ever regretted planting something because it spreads too vigorously, or another reason for an epic fail? Okay, so I know, if you watched the farm tour that came out, I was talking about this one plant that's just going everywhere, and I was like, yay, I'm so excited. It's almost like it's invasive. So the context to that is where it's only where we water that things grow, right? Grass dies. Nothing grows where we don't water. And I've planted mints on the edge of watering areas. I've planted mints in spaces where they you'd think, from how people talk about mint, that it would be able to survive with the limited amounts of water that it's getting, and it doesn't, right? Even our grass, the grass dies, everything dies without water. And because we don't water everything, anything in the so we just water the farm beds. So if I plant something into a farm bed section, and our farm beds also are a little bit sectioned out. There's some spacing between a lot of them. So it's never going to leave the farm bed, because it's going to get to the edge of the water, and then it's not going to be able to survive beyond that. So I'm not overly concerned about the things that I've put in so far. But I am cautious about actual invasives. And so the one thing that I look for when I'm is this an invasive, is if they can still survive without water. And so there are on our property, we have some really invasive plants that were here as landscaping plants prior to moving here. And I've seen a lot of them. I'm ooh, this would be great. This would be great to use as a flower. But I don't use it because I don't want to be spreading invasives. So, and there are things that I've done in the past. There's this roux mix that I really, really like. It's as a seed head, it's gorgeous. It gets these green colors, and it also goes pinks. I really, really like it. I've picked it as a weed in the past, but I've started to notice it growing in dry areas, right? I've started to notice it growing in ditches, quite vigorously, which means that's in my area, it's an invasive. So I don't want to be using that, because I want everything that people take from me to be safe for them to compost without it potentially causing damage to the ecosystem. So yeah. So there is some stuff that you'll see me do that you might not be able to do, because most people don't live in a desert that freezes in the winter, that freezes hard in the winter. The Okanagan is a really unique, really unique area. Someone's a fellow farmer in the Okanagan just wondering if your zinnias are blooming yet. If you want to feel good about yourself, I haven't planted my zinnias yet. So that's how far I am from zinnia blooms. I'll be getting zinnias end of August, maybe. the fall's gonna be great, but we're a ways off till we get there. These cats are slacking on their job. Yeah, with the voles, I'm assuming that was. Serina, can you recall the name of the large blue ornamental thistle you planted? So
I like salt.
yes, you are crazy. So no, don't do that. Don't. That is not healthy, right? But you can go put it on your popcorn. Hey, don't do that. Okay, you're being silly. Okay, so the large blue thistle plant is a sea holly, or what's the name? Euringium. That's the Latin name for it. I don't know what the variety name is for it because those actually came from like a local nursery. Like I bought them as a perennial plant, and they were just labeled as sea holly. So I keep trying to order like a large sea holly from Van Noort, where we get a lot of our perennials from, and it's been like sold out. Like no one can get it, and I can't find seeds for it. But I've grown from seed like blue glitter and white glitter, which is like a smaller version of it, and they're really nice. But yeah, it's hard to beat those big ones. And I know that they come. There's lots of different varieties, and they come in like different tones. Some are more of like purple blues, some are more like a gray blue, and I've even seen some that have like green tones to it. Yeah, I really love them. They're one of my favorite. I'd love to have like a huge patch of them. But yeah, someone's here, zone 4, and we can't perennialize them. I'm assuming that's like the glads, which is too bad, right? It'd make my, if I could have perennial plantings of glads, then I for sure could do dollar bunches of glads. But I also think that because no one can perennialize glads in the Okanagan, it does make them a more valuable flower. So I know this isn't a question, but I see this talked about a lot in the flower farming groups. And like this is something that we deal with. So when we sell at the farmers market, we're a flower farm. There is another specific flower farm there, and I feel we complement each other really, really nicely because we have very different styles. The looks of our flowers are quite different. So it's kind of like we're not stepping on each other's toes at all, because we do different stuff. But then everyone else like brings flowers. Like they like, by the time the summer hits, there's like 12 people that have flowers at the farmer's market because, people will like, oh, I planted a few zinnias on my farm. I'm a veggie farmer. I put in a row of this, and so I'm bringing it down to sell at the farmer's market. And then there's also lots of people who have like fruit and berry farms. And they're the same. They have like these landscaped areas, and they're like, oh, I'll pick flowers out of my landscaping to be able to sell them. So sometimes the stuff that is really common in landscaping gets sold for a really low price. And so it's not necessarily a great thing for me as a flower farmer to be bringing to the farmer's market, because I'm going to have to sell it for a lot more money. And there's going to be competition. So glads, like a good example is lilies. Right? Like when lily season comes, lilies grow great here. Like there'll be lots of people with lilies down at the farmer's market because they'll have cut them out of their perennialized landscaping. So I wouldn't ever go with like a big bunch of just lilies because I sell my lilies for $5 a stem. So, like for me, like, oh, I got 5 lily stems together. I'd have to charge like $28 for it, to be $5 plus taxes, right? And someone would be like, yeah, but I could buy that for $10 at that other stand. But I can come down with a single lily in a mixed bouquet that's in a wrap, that looks like a different product. And so glads are one of those things. If you live in an area where they perennialize, they might not be a great idea to put into your flower farm if you're selling down at the farmer's market, because everyone else is going to be there selling them, like they grow like weeds when they naturalize. So, some people might be selling them for, oh, here's a bunch of 20 for $10 or a buck each, right? And there's still like the people who are doing that, if it's not their main product, they, probably does make them a lot of money. So it makes sense for them to do it, but you might have to sell them for more because your system isn't set up, right? Like you need to make money on your flowers. It's not just a little nice added bonus down at the farmer's market. So yeah, it's sometimes you gotta kind of look at when things are difficult to grow. Sometimes that's the best thing to grow, right? And I think that's like why we've had so much success with like the ranunculus, right? Like no one's growing that in their home garden, and like it's expensive. It's an investment. You need equipment to grow it successfully here. So, there's also not a lot of competition for me down at the farmer's market. So it's like, if you want it, you got to pay for it, right? You can't get it for cheap. Why don't you do the downtown Kelowna market on Mother's Day? So there's a Sunday market in downtown Kelowna, this is what I think that you're talking about. But it runs only for a summer season. So I think it runs like June, July, August, September. It's kind of like a special like pop-up market. Whereas the Saturday farmers market is year round. It starts being outdoors in April 1st or maybe even March. It starts being outdoors when it's like pretty uncomfortable to be there. And it goes till the end of October, where it's yet again really uncomfortable to be there because you're there at like the coldest time of the day. So you're like freezing your butt off in those like shoulder seasons. And then for November to March, it's at an indoor location. And then in the season, when the outdoor season, they also have the Wednesday market, right? Because when it's outdoors, it's more popular. There's more people to sell, and there's more customers. Yeah, and so then they're building up the downtown market, but it's new and it's not established yet. It can take like a decade for a market to become really strong and really independent. So in the future, maybe it'll be like a longer season for it. But as it is now, it's kind of just in this summer window. And we have talked, like, because the idea for this year, before, when we were talking about we're going to have a full-time employee, and then we pivoted and we weren't going to have an employee, but now we have an employee again. So, the plans are kind of all over the place. But we were talking about wanting to do the Sunday market because we basically could make bouquets on Friday for Saturday and Sunday, because if they're in the cooler, they're not losing any vase life as long as we're storing them properly in the cooler. And so we could have a big bouquet making day on Friday and then the 2 days. But the one thing, like I said, we're trying to have a little bit more work-life balance this year. And this year we're trying to prioritize the videos, maybe more so even than the selling on the farm. So it becomes a question of, like, do we want to work both days of the weekend? Do we want to, like, where do we want to put our time? Would we be better off to make another video instead of doing another market, right? Because the time investment, because it takes a lot of time to make the bouquets, it takes a lot of time to pick the flowers to make the bouquets, it takes an entire day for Ian to be down at the market. Like, that's then a day when, because he's full-time working, I'm kind of part-time working, because then like the kids are home and there's like child management things, right? It means I can do less on that day. We only have so many hours, and so it's like, where's the best way to spend it? One thing that I would really like, one market I'd really like to sell at this year is on Friday nights. There's a market in Lake Country, just down the hill from us, and it was where we first started selling, and the kids loved it. There's a water park there. It's really small. It's like, so we could go with the kids. The kids could like just go play. They could have a good time while Ian's selling. The kids like going to markets, but they also they start to get too cooped up. So it would be like, oh, they could go, they could play with their friends, and then we could, even if, because we wouldn't sell very much with it being such a small market, but we could promote the stand, because the stand seems like, the stand is just seeming smarter and smarter, you know, the more time we have with it. You know, it's still shocking to me that last year we sold more at the stand than we did at the market. And so, you know, it might be worth, you know, a few Friday nights being a little bit busier than normal so that we can kind of build up the stand even more. You know, and they've been doing these like concerts down there. So, you know, like I was saying, work-life balance. Obviously, I guess it's not great work-life balance to be like, oh, we're going to go to work, but call it like a fun social time. But we could go to work at this market and have it be a fun social time where we go and we listen to music and we play at the park, while still doing stuff. Have you ever grown nicotina? So I've never grown it, and honestly, I don't think I'm going to, because I don't think I like it. I don't think I like the look of it. You know, like a lot of what I do is very like 80s style. Like it's very like, and like, because I was like, what is it that I'm doing with these bouquets that looks so different than what other people are doing? You know, and I think that the look that's really popular right now with florists, and like I see it all the time with like other flower farmers, is open and airy and natural and wildflowers. And that is not the look that I'm going for. I like, if I make a wedding bouquet, you know, those like I guess they're not 80s, it's like 90s. It's 1992, and Celine Dion, Power of Love is your wedding march, and the bouquet that you're holding is a ball of white roses, right? Like, I'm dating myself because like I'm old enough to know this. But I'm sure, okay, and you have like lots of jewels on your gown, and it's like has puff sleeves. And Power of Love is going, and you got this like ball bouquet. And florists hated that. They made these ball bouquets for years and years and years, and it drove them crazy, and they're like, no, we're doing open, we're doing airy, they drape, and there's movement, and it's fluttery, and it's beautiful, and it's so soft, and it's so feminine. We're not doing these ball bouquets anymore. But I'm like, I don't know, that ball bouquet looks kind of cool, but maybe let's do it with green zinnias and like and orange flowers. And then weird, ugly textural things. And so like what I'm doing, even though it doesn't look anything like that bouquet, is actually stylistically has a lot more in common with those bouquets than with what is kind of trendy right now. And like, I'm not wrong, obviously, like, because people like the style, right? So, you know, and I think that I'm doing something right in leaning into continuing to do this, because I think it's part of the reason why my bouquets look quite unique. Because there's something that's familiar about them, but then there's also something that's like very unexpected, with like what I'm using. So I'm talking about nicotina. I really like the look of it, and I've seen it used really, really successfully in these like open and airy and beautiful type arrangements. But if I tried to put it into the style that I do, I think it would look just really messy. So I've stayed away from it, but So I'm sorry I can't help you with germination. Okay. Do you grow bearded irises and use them as cut flowers? Why not? Okay, so I don't grow them. But I was saying to Ian the other day, I was like, we should get some of these because they grow really well here because of the drought tolerance for them. And they perennialize in really nicely. They're nice. They're very cold hardy. They can handle the heat. So there's something that would be really well adapted, but I've heard that they don't have great vase life. I think that, so because we're so focused on, my goal is to grow everything that has 10 plus day vase life so that I can tell my customers that the vase life is 7 days, right? Like if everything is supposed to last 10 days, then I feel comfortable saying 7 days because that gives me like a day to sell it. And then like, a day or two of like, I don't know, like I don't want to I don't want to overpromise and underperform. And so I think that bearded irises, like some of them have better vase lives, but I think that they're more like a 5 day is my understanding. And I haven't done a lot of research into them. But I do know that people locally do use them. I just haven't done it yet. One thing that I want to do more of kind of as the farm matures though is that I want to have more gardens. I want to have more spots where things just like look really pretty, and they don't have to look pretty for getting cut, but they're just there for me to enjoy and for all of you guys to enjoy too. So I really think that bearded irises are something we're going to be growing more of. There's like so many incredible varieties. I can imagine it being the type of thing where like the dahlias where Ian just falls in love with them, and then we just keep adding more and more and more to the collection. But yeah, no, so I can't really help with like how to use them as a cut flower. Serina, what happened to your monster rhubarb from your old place? Okay, so it's still alive, but like I said, nothing grows here unless you water it. Everything without water dies, and I haven't been very kind to it. so it's limping along, but what it really needs is for me to get an irrigation system on it. It's along the fence line on the far side of the farm, and our goal is to turn the back side of the outbuilding into a shade garden. It's the only other spot on the farm where there's any shade. The building itself actually like creates, I don't know, probably about 12 feet of shade. And so we want to put in a large planting of hellebores. The plan is like put in like 100, 200 hellebores so that we'll have more for Mother's Day. And then we would probably, we would do it. It would look insane because it would be like, whoa, that is a lot of hellebores. But then we would kind of landscape it also with shade plants so that it could be enjoyable when the hellebores, not just when we're harvesting hellebores. But it just gets put off and put off and put off. But the rhubarb is kind of in a full sun spot just above where the outbuilding is. So I drag the hose for it. I usually I try to water it once a month. But yeah, it's just I've been abusing it, and it's very sad. But one of these days we're gonna get that garden in. We'll add it on to the irrigation system that will water all of that, and then we'll be back in the rhubarb, because it broke into a million pieces when we transplanted it. So the biggest piece, because it was like this monster rhubarb, it was insane. And the story of that rhubarb is it's like a 20-year-old rhubarb that I've been like dragging around. My parents, like, they moved from a house, and Ian and I went and dug it up and planted. Like when they sold their house, it was like kind of when we'd first bought our house, and we were like, oh, I want that rhubarb. And so we dug it up, and then brought it with us again. So as soon as it gets water, it'll bounce back. But yeah, there's probably about like 6-8 rhubarb plants that are still limping along. I made a rhubarb crumble with it this year. So there was enough that I harvested a little bit off of it, but I try to not. Okay. Do you add biochar to the soil? Or why don't you add biochar to the soil? So biochar is charcoal. Is kind of my understanding. It's and the great thing about charcoal is it's basically pure carbon. So what it does is it holds moisture really well. You know, and then charcoal. It's more of like a soil structure item, from my understanding. So it does really good for helping to hold moisture in the soil, and but I don't really think that it's like much of a fertilizer. Maybe it like slowly breaks down and helps. But yeah, my understanding is my wanting to use it would be for how dry, for my sand pit. So it's not really a very common product here. It's not like, oh, there's a place locally who makes biochar. So to buy it, I would have to kind of be like bringing it in, and it would be really expensive. One thing though that we have tons of access to is there's lots of peat. There's lots of peat in my area. So the compost that we have been buying for years is from Black Diamond Soil Services. It's gorgeous. It's so beautiful. And it's peat based because, you know, the next town over, they own like a peat mine. There's a lot of peat in the area. So because it's a local product, you know, it's easy to get. And then so we were buying. I'm gonna talk about compost, and it's gonna be like very niche. So when I use compost, because this is something that people like really don't understand, and it's when I use compost, I'm not using compost as something that adds fertility to my soil. When I use compost, I'm using it as a mulch. I'm using it to add soil retention to my soil because I'm a sand pit and I live in a desert and it doesn't rain here. And so the more soil retention, so in the last like 2 weeks, the flight path has changed for the airplanes. They used to circle the other way, but now they fly right over my house. And this is like the window. We get all the airplanes like 5 to 8. It's all these like, they go first thing in the morning. They're like 8 to 10. There's lots of airplanes. And then like 5 to 8, there's lots of airplanes. But yeah, it's very loud for these live videos. I apologize for being distracted by airplanes. Okay. So when I use compost, it's for water retention in my soil, because having my plants stay moist without having to water a million times a day is going to lead to healthier plants than all the fertilizer in the world I can stick into my garden. When we've been purchasing from Black Diamond Soil Services, their peat-based compost, they were adding chicken manure to it, so it did have some fertility too. But the compost itself, I don't ever think of compost as nutrients. I think of it as mulch. Because we were buying the peat-based compost because we were looking for an organic compost. And the reason we were looking for an organic compost is we've had some really bad experiences with non-organic compost because it's been like filled with garbage. And so we don't have a lot of, like, I see a lot of people talk about, oh, I got this manure, I got this compost, and it killed everything because it had all these like glyphosate. I don't know how to say that, but it had all the chemicals left over from people spraying the stuff and then turning it into compost, and then it was still in there. We don't really have that because nothing grows here without water. So there's no cornfields here that are like sprayed to death with Roundup because they're like there just isn't a lot of corn because you have to water it, right? So if
Mommy.
sorry, Sam, no, I'm busy,
No,
right?
No.
Okay, what? Okay,
When you said we turned at a treat,
yeah.
we are not like a treat, so I did not even that.
Okay, go ask Daddy about it. See what Daddy says.
You always blush. You, I
Come on,
always.
come push it. Bedtime.
I have a child who's trying. He's doing the. I'm gonna ask you because I didn't like the answer that I got from Dad, which is not allowed. Okay, so yeah, so it's not that our the compost, we can get compost from whatever. Well, we'll get them. One of our cats escaped. So our composts are safe. Our manures are safe. It's not like we're gonna get a lot of like worrying about things dying from composts being added, but they can be very full of garbage, right? Like they almost look like, oh, like someone took bags of garbage and like just chipped it into the compost. It's just mixed with all this like chopped up plastic. And the last thing that I want is to add tiny little bits of plastic into my farm that I'm going to be spending years and years and years of my life picking out of the ground. So we'd been looking for the organic compost for that reason, and especially so because we're growing food, right? We were trying to use organic as much as possible for growing the food, just because people are eating it, right? It's nice to eat organic food. But when it comes to flowers, I'm a little bit less concerned because like don't eat my flowers. I'm like they're not a food product. We do still grow like organically. It's not like we're spraying. Like we don't spray at all. We don't spray organic or conventional pesticides or herbicides or fungicides. We don't use those products on our farm. But you know, the organic has some of the things that make organic don't always make a lot of sense. But if you want to be certified organic, you still have to do it. So I'm personally comfortable with growing flowers with using a non-organic compost, and my local landfill who makes the compost, that's kind of the most affordable compost, which is the one that was filled with garbage, has like really improved their processing systems over the last 5 years of when I was like, I don't want to put that garbage on my soil. And it's not full of garbage anymore. So we're starting to use this new type of compost. And instead of being peat based, it's wood chip based, because we live in BC. We're surrounded by trees. We're surrounded by forests. There's lots and lots of wood products available. And so the brown matter in this compost is chipped wood. And because it's chipped wood, it's chunkier. It's heavier. It's a less fine product than the peat-based compost we'd previously been using. The peat-based compost that we'd previously been using basically was like a beautiful, fine potting soil, and we used it as potting soil a lot. Whereas the new compost, I wouldn't use it so much that way. Because it has these bigger chunks of wood in it, though, it doesn't break down as quickly in our soil. The peat, because it's so fine, it would get eaten up by all the organisms in the soil. It kind of would be like burnt out of our soil in 2 months, right? So it did great soil retention for 2 months, but then on the, and with veggies, that was great because most of our veggie crops were a 2-month crop, right? So, okay, the veggies are out. We do a new bed prep to plant the next round in. We're putting compost onto the farm again. It's great. We got another 2 months to go. But with doing these flowers, the flower crops are a lot longer, right? A lot of our flower crops are like 120 days. And so we want something that's going to have more soil retention for longer. And so by using this compost that has these bigger chunks of wood, the great thing about big chunks of wood is this is now coming back to biochar. They're like the biochar in the fact that they're going to have better water retention for longer periods of time. So by moving towards a more wood chip heavy compost. Our compost is now providing us with more of like a full year of water, of like mulching purposes, or it might even help for water retention into the previous year. And it's very, very accessible, and like by using this we're saving money even over the peat compost. So that is the reason why you're probably not going to see us using biochar anytime soon, unless someone starts doing biochar, or unless there's like a company who wants, if there's a biochar company who wants to sponsor us and give us, like, drop off a truckload of biochar for us to use, I would be more than happy to do that. But I'm not gonna buy a truckload of biochar for myself. Though I found a company, and I know, like, I should get back to the questions because I'll go to 2 hours, but then I need to stop. And I have the questions paused, like, so I'm not seeing the chat in real time. I'm just scrolling through it. There's a local company who's making these sheep's wool pellets that I was like, man, we need to make this company, we need to like make friends with this company so we can like do a tour and like show off these things because they're really cool. So she takes the sheep's wool that's like all dirty and gross and has sheep's poop, and like they can't turn it into like fiber products, and like chops it up into a million pieces and then presses it into these little pellets, and then you use the sheep's wool as a mulch. And sheep's wool is like an incredible mulch, and it's like, so like really, really good like water retention, and then it breaks down into like really, really good fertilizer in the soil. Okay, I'm just daddy has to deal with it, please.
It's almost like we're brushing.
Yeah, after I will come. I'm 20 minutes and then I'm gonna come. Yes, okay. Yeah, so the sheep's wool is a great product. It's, for me personally, I wouldn't be able to get a sheep's pelt and lay it on the farm, right? It's just too difficult. It's something that I like, that I can't use, but in the fact that they're processing them into these pellets is something that I could sprinkle around the farm. It's something that I could use as like a soil amendment. And I'm really excited about it. What I want to do is, she's been doing this. I follow her on Instagram. Waste Not Wool. That's the name. And so she's been doing this test where she has like a planter, she has like a hanging basket, and she has it mulched with her pellets, and it like she only has to water it once a week, whereas normally in the Okanagan you have to like water 4 times a day. So I'm like, oh, I want to get a bag of these so I can put them on my pots at the front, because I have these pots, and I water them because I empty buckets into it, but I'm like, oh, if I can mulch it, that'd be amazing. Like I'd consider maybe having decorative pots around the garden if I could get away with only watering them every couple days. Okay, just scrolling through. Oh, so I'm seeing some people talking about the fires, and that was like a question earlier on. So we've had hardly any smoke this year. Which is insane, because normally if there's like fire, it's on the West Coast, right? It's like normally like BC, Washington, Oregon, California, we're the ones who are always drowning in the smoke. But most of the fires in Canada are in eastern Canada this year, and then Alberta, which is the province beside us, they have a lot of fires right now. But the Rocky Mountains are between us and Alberta, so they're kind of like, the smoke can travel, and we have had smoke traveling over already this year because of those fires. But our weather patterns tend to kind of like flow up, right? Like we share breathing space with California fires more so than with the Alberta fires. So we're safe. There's no fires around here, and we don't have smoke, but it's only a matter of time. We will have smoke. Are you heckling?
No, I'm just curious how your time's going.
I'm gonna come in in 15 minutes. Okay. Do you have a video that demonstrates how you fold your wrapping paper for your bouquets? What size is it and weight? Okay, so I've shown it a bunch in the videos, but I don't know where it is. So I'm gonna make a short. One of our things that we want to do this year is we want to make a bunch of shorts. Rick's like, that's a great question that is easy for me to make a video to share with you guys. We're trying to get caught up on the video. The goal is get caught up on the farm, get caught up on the videos, and then try to get into a routine where we can get some of these shorts made, so that we can answer these questions. And so then when you're like, hey, how do you wrap the bouquets? I can be like, there's a short for that. And it'll be easy to find rather than hunting through like a 30-minute market video where I show how to make the bouquets. But I will say where I get the paper from is Uline. And it's 18-inch by 18-inch squares, and it's 30-pound craft paper. So that's where I source it. Yeah, and you can get rolls. I know other people use 18-inch rolls, and those you can find on Amazon, or you can find them at Staples, or like you can find them like in a town. But with the roll, you have to like tear off each individual piece. So for me to have the squares is like a huge time saver. But yeah, the way I do it is in my opinion, it's a lot quicker than how some other people do it, because lots of people will fold it and then they'll cut a slit and then they fold it again and they do there's a lot of steps. And what I do is I kind of do this like offset fold, and then I like do 2 staples instead of like cuts and everything. But it's on the list. It's like one of the first shorts that we're gonna make. Right, let's see. I'm very behind because people are still talking about the stand. Would you be able to build a second stand building? So the stand, because I think I hear what you're saying. Like, what about having more space? What about like area to sell more? Is what I'm assuming you're saying. Because it wouldn't make sense to have a second stand just randomly, right? Like there has to be a reason. But we were intentional about building the stand the size that it is. It is 8 by 8, and then the inside is even smaller because the walls are actually quite thick on the stand. We built the stand the same way as we built our walk-in cooler. The stand actually has 6 inches of like heavy duty insulation inside of it. The doors on the stand are like insulated exterior doors. They're very expensive doors. And we built the stand small because the plan with the stand is to be able to keep it cool. So the front of the road gets the afternoon sun, which is the hottest time of the day, and it like glares in there as hot as it possibly can be, like just boom onto the stand beside the road. The road cooks. It gets so hot up there that we've put thermometers up there, and it's 50 degrees Celsius, which I don't even know how hot that is in Fahrenheit. 120, I don't know. But it's like stupid hot. It's like and so for years and years we were like, we can't sell things up at the roadside because it's too hot. As soon as we put stuff out there, it just cooks, it just dies. And so we were like, yep, we wish we could do it, but we can't. And then one day I was scrolling on Instagram and I saw a farm who was like, we got our shed going, like, yay, it's awesome. And it had an air conditioner in it. And I was like, why did I never think that I could just put an air conditioner in my shed at the front? Like, obviously, like it's so close to my house. It's easy to run power. So my mind was exploded, and I was like, I can have a roadside stand. So we built it super insulated. It has a massive air conditioner in it. And I know people all the time are like, oh, like you should close the door, or you should get like a curtain, and we could do that. But it does a pretty good job of keeping it cool in there, because the fact the air conditioner is like really large, and because of the fact that it's like very, very cooled. So it's small. It's small so that it can stay at a good temperature. And also, I think the Mother's Day video is a really good example of how easy it is to utilize the roadside stand if we wanted to, right? So, if the roadside stand was any bigger, it would be very it wouldn't do as good. I am still very happy with the size of the roadside stand, because when it's like a Monday, this is like one of our quietest days of the week, and I put like 6 bouquets in the stand, because we're not going to necessarily sell them, and at the end of the day I replace them with fresh bouquets. And so if I put 6 bouquets out there and they don't sell, then that's 6 bouquets. But if I put 20 bouquets out there and they don't sell, that's 20 bouquets. That's starting to be like, well, why did I even bother? And so the stand is small enough that when there's almost nothing in there, it doesn't look pathetic. But it is big enough that, like, on Mother's Day, I was able to put $2,000 in there and it didn't feel overflowing. So we're nowhere near running out of space in the roadside stand. And the one thing that I would like to do more of with the roadside stand is to sell plants, and like, not necessarily this year, but going into future years. And there's lots of space outside, right? We have the deck that's on the front of it, and like in the video, or I'm trying to think if it's been in the videos yet. We're selling tomatoes on the deck. We have a rack set up that has tomatoes on it. It held 100 tomatoes. And it didn't take up a lot of space. And so it's like very compact to do that. And if we wanted, we could build more deck space to display more plants. And plants anything that I'm going to sell can handle it getting 50, because they have to handle growing in the Okanagan. So the heat isn't a problem for living plants. It's a problem for the cut flowers. So I'm really happy with the stand. I don't think that we're gonna outgrow it. And also, like, I don't want to add other products to it that would take up more space, because if we added more products to it that would take up more space, then it would be more of a theft risk. And as it is now, it's kind of just, it's a good balance. I don't know if that. Are you planning on updating the front of the property with flower beds to further attract customers, or is that something that won't really help with sales? I think that's going to be massive, and spoiler, it's the video that we're working on next. I've planted a garden up there, and honestly, the plan was to plant a garden up there last year, and like, my thinking is the more insane and decadent and beautiful I can make it at the front, the better. I just need water, right? So we currently don't have water. It's on the week for this. It's on the job list for this week. But last year I didn't get the garden planted because I was waiting for water. So we have it planted, but eventually I'd like to landscape the entire front. We just kind of have around the stand, and like, the more beautiful it is up there, the more eyeballs it's going to catch, the more it's going to be a reason to stop. I'm like, we could paint a mural, we could have a selfie station, we can do these things. If we can build up the tourism aspect of the stand, it's just going to make the stand better and better. So yeah, that kind of stuff is like a huge part of our business. Okay, people are talking about biochar. I'm like, am I to the point that you guys are you talking about biochar? Yeah, someone's saying biochar can tie up nitrogen for multiple years, and that is one of the risks of like wood chips too, right? Like the wood also, but it's fine because I can just add more nitrogen. I don't care if it ties up the nitrogen, because like I said, the compost isn't about fertility. The compost is about moisture retention, and you know. We are feast or famine with water here. It rains 2 to 3 inches in a week, and then it doesn't rain for weeks. Yeah, I would like. It never rains 2 to 3 inches in Kelowna. I think our average rainfall in Kelowna is 13 inches a year, or not rainfall, precipitation, right? So that includes snow. And most of our moisture we normally get rain in June. June is actually one of the wettest months of the year, and then we get precipitation in we get a little bit of rain in October, and then we usually get some snow November, December, January. But our access to water in the Okanagan is based on the fact that we're a valley surrounded by mountains. So all of our water is snowpack melt that flows down into like established irrigation catchment systems that we like then feed off of. So the one nice thing is because our water system is based on winter snowfall, we have storage for an entire year's worth of water usage. So, you know, it makes us a little bit, we're already used to not getting rain. So it means that the system that's been created for the last 100 years isn't dependent on rain. So in some ways we're a little bit more protected for our water systems than other areas that get a lot of rain, but they're not used to going for like a month or 2 months without rain. We've been really lucky. Oh, thanks so much, Mother Nature's apothecary. Okay, Leah's here. Okay. I'm trying to see if I can get to the end. I'm scrolling up, that's why it's bouncing. I love Roxy in the videos. Roxy's so cute. She hasn't been around as much. I think because it's been hot, I think she's been getting to go inside her house more during the days. Whereas in the spring, she barks all the time because she barks at us to like call us over. She's like bark 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 because she wants us to come and like give her attention. So could you use a glass? Yeah. Someone's asking, could you use a glass door on the roadside stand so people could still see in, but you'd be more efficient on the air conditioning? You know, and that is one thing that I have considered, getting like a storm door. The problem is installing it. I'm like, oh, then I'd have to install it. You know, like maybe you
didn't even build it.
I know I didn't build it. Daddy didn't build it either.
I know that.
Do you have much time to catch up with other flower farmers on YouTube? No.
I like that you made it big so you can see it. It worked.
So honestly, at this point, I don't watch YouTube videos anymore. Is kind of
I do.
Yeah. The only YouTube videos we watch is Mr. Beast as a family. We have like popcorn and watch Mr. Beast every once in a while as like family TV time.
Which is today.
Oh, jealous! I didn't get any. But yeah, no, like I'm just too busy to watch videos. But okay, Leah, go or I won't come. Okay, I'm trying to get through the comments quickly.
I won't talk.
Okay, don't talk. Thanks. I use Instagram, so you know, and I follow people like Nicole. I do know like somewhat, but yeah, I'm very busy. That's why I appreciate so much that you guys watch like hour-long videos of ours, because I'm like, man, like I don't have time for that. Like, well, sometimes. You said you weren't going to talk. But yeah, so I really appreciate all the time that you guys give us, because I know how precious time is. Oh, I did it. I made it to the end of the comments.
Yay.
Okay. And look at that. It's 2 hours, so I have to get going.
Yeah, that's actually.
What?
You said normally 1 hour.
I know, I got a minute. We got okay. So thank you so much for hanging out. Like it's always fun to hang out with you guys. I think the plan is we're gonna try to do these Monday videos like fairly regularly. Except for every once in a while they're gonna be members only. So like if you're part of the members group, I think we'll pick kind of one of the weeks that will be the one that's going to be members only, and then you have to be part of the membership program, and the video's private, so not everyone can access it. But we have a video coming out tomorrow. We have like a vlog about going to the farmers market, and yeah, we're working on another one this week to come out. Hopefully on Friday. That's the goal. We're trying to stay organized. But yeah, thanks so much for hanging out, guys. And I'll see you guys next week.
I want to make more cards.